I've come up with something I'm quite pleased with, and I know some of you will be interested, so here's a video about it. First of all, this is the device that I was using. I made this a few years ago. It's a rolling dipper. World War I machine.
Yeah, if it was driven, whether it would...
Yeah, we could put just a big chain and sprocket on the side.
Take it. No, I was thinking more that the electric wheelchair motor. It's just loads of torque, really slow. Just the shaft thing.
Yeah, well, that's with no weight on it.
Yeah.
So pushing that along isn't the challenge. It's pushing it along with lots of weight. But what we want to determine is how much weight would be needed. I made it so the individual spikes make a 6-inch, 15cm square grid pattern on the ground as you roll it along. The elephant garlic that I grow needs that sort of spacing, because of course you don't want them too far apart, or you'd be wasting a lot of valuable space in the bed, and also weeds would have somewhere to grow in between them. And if they're too close, then obviously they won't grow properly. So spacing is actually vital, and I was pleased with this clunky contraption for quite a long time. Now if we had sandy soil, it might make holes deep enough to plant directly in, or if we added a lot of weight to it, then the holes might end up deep enough. But as it is, the holes that it makes are too shallow, so in effect it just marks out the ground, which is actually very useful. But then I still have to come along with a tapered metal bar to make the final holes, so there's a lot of work involved. Is it a bit heavy now? Nice. Getting a bit more awkward, isn't it?
A little bit.
And the holes
Slightly deeper.
slightly deeper.
Not deep enough.
Well, you could plant something in there, but that one doesn't work so well. So the challenge this year was to come up with something better. Of course, I should remind you that we don't have a tractor, and yes, we do have wonderful working horses who would enjoy pulling something along like this. Yes, that looks perfect. Oh, it's so easy. But there's not a lot of room for manoeuvring a horse. They are quite big. And sometimes they step sideways and wipe out an entire row of precious potatoes or whatever. And they really need a lot of headland for turning around at either end. And if the ground's wet, they turn it to mud in no time. This is as steep as it can go, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, let's have a look at that then. It's just kind of a mess, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful soil, but and the holes are there, really, just that they kind of fill up again a bit. If someone was planting, then they'd know where to scoop, and it will scoop easily enough.
Yeah.
So you want damp conditions for planting, dry conditions for using the railway. On the same day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can't go any deeper.
Because they'll just rip up.
And this is part of the problem, that if it gets too claggy, it will just get stuck on the clipping knobbles.
Well, it'll rip holes as well if they're any longer, wouldn't they?
So that's why we haven't used them much for the garlic, so far anyway. So I've been thinking about plows. For many years, in fact, I've been thinking about plows because they are such interesting things. As you know, there are all sorts, of course, for different soils and for different jobs. Classically, they were designed to neatly turn over the sod, which smothers the grass, so the new crop could grow without competition. This is us a few years ago now. All four of us look so young. Turning over the sod looks like a simple job, but it requires a very clever shape to slice the rooty sod, lift it and roll it over and lay it down again in one smooth operation. One of the challenges is to get the depth of the cut just right. Of course, nowadays ploughs are usually mounted onto a tractor, so the cutting depth is set from the cab with a little lever. Too easy. But our old horse-drawn ones rely entirely on their shape and the way that they are set up to keep them at the right depth. They are magnificent pieces of engineering in themselves, but they're also a direct link to a great long history of humans working with horses and cattle to grow crops. Anyway, this present project requires a different sort of plough altogether. There's no grass to cut through, so I don't need a coulter, and I don't need to turn anything over or disturb the soil much at all. My aim is simply to make a shallow furrow or trench for the garlic cloves to sit in. It only has to be 3 inches deep or so, 75 millimeters, and 1 inch wide or so at the bottom. A furrowing plough has 2 shares instead of just one, and it just lifts and pushes the soil up and out of the way. Easy! I should be able to make one of those surely. So I started with a cardboard model, the original CAD design tool of course. Because it's not going to be held up or held down by a tractor, it has to be self-leveling at the correct depth. So it has to dig itself into the soil somehow and then level out somehow and continue at a constant depth somehow. Tricky enough challenges, in fact. When it looked about right, I used the cardboard pieces as templates for the computer drawings, so then I could cut them on the marvellous CNC plasma cutting machine table. I used 6mm steel for the main spine or beam. The idea of the holes is to give me attachment options when I start pulling it along. The higher the attachment, the more the nose should point downwards. Every angle is crucial, and of course I got them all wrong. But this is my first attempt, so I wasn't expecting anything else. The shares and mould boards are made of 3mm steel. Now a real plough mould board is a complicated 3-dimensional shape with smooth curves throughout. I cheated and made up this first one in the same way as the cardboard model. Simple folds in 2-dimensional shapes. That first angle at the pointy end is what keeps it in the ground. Then there's a transitional plate that makes the furrow, and then finally a wing or mould board that throws the soil up and out of the furrow. That's the plan anyway, that's what's supposed to happen. So let's take it out and see what actually happens. The garlic beds are kept weed free with mulch while the garlic is actually growing, but for the 2 months between harvest and replanting, I put a sheet of black plastic on to keep the sunlight out. Of course, the wind often takes it off again. It's a game we like to play every year. The soil in this bed is really good now after years of muck and straw mulch, so it should be easy to make some sort of furrow in it. Though this patch is soaking wet, not ideal conditions. The remains of the straw mulch build up under the drawbar, and I'm having to push down to get it to dig in. The actual furrow it makes looks pretty good though, about the right depth for what we're planting, maybe wider than I need. Now whether this ends up being pulled by an engine or a motor or a person or a horse or a donkey, it will be dragged along the ground. So let's see what happens when we do that. Not good. In fact, completely useless. It doesn't dig itself in, and it tips up and it tips over. A frying pan might do a better job. I tried attaching it lower down and pulling it at a lower angle, and it looked a little more promising. Well, no, not really. I'm trying to be positive. It was useless. Back to the drawing board and the plasma cutter for new shares and a new spine. This time I added a place so I could add a weighted tail at the back to hold that down, and I lowered the angle of the pulling point. The share and mould board are now made from one piece, but the dotted line cuts make it easier to bend them accurately. I changed the shape too, so the furrow is not as wide either. And I hope the pipe will help keep the nose down and also act as a depth stop once the plough is deep enough.
Yeah, so it's all bunging itself up here.
Again, the throat gets clogged up quickly with the remains of last year's mulch, but it looks as if the depth stop pipe would work if I can get the plough to dig in the first place.
It doesn't go quite far enough down, I'd say.
So the next iteration had two major changes. I lifted the spine here to make a larger throat, hoping it wouldn't get clogged up so easily. And most importantly, I added a chisel tip that sticks down below the floor of the plough. This time we raked away the mulch too, most of it, and the chisel tip transformed the way it digs in. Like a submarine going down, it just slid smoothly into the soil. I like that. Though they do exist in some examples, none of our traditional ploughs have a chisel tip. They rely on the ploughman lifting the handles to get them started.
trenching. It seems to be working, but the challenge is to pull from here at the ground level. Maybe if these wings were longer, maybe.
Or just tilt it out more.
Yeah, but we're going to have another one here, you see.
Oh yeah.
There isn't any space. Maybe,
Maybe if that pressure created between the two,
yeah,
it might stick it together, and then have the outer ones pushing out a bit further. Maybe. We'll go back to straightness test.
Oh, yeah. Okay, failed that. Stone.
Right, so that was our most promising trial to date. The pulling bar didn't lift up too high, and the cross piece stops the plough tipping over. So progress for sure.
Digging in.
So the next one had an even higher throat, and I left out the tail provision because it doesn't seem to be necessary now. But I added an extra cross piece at the front to keep the plough rigid within the pipe. I even cut slots in that piece so I could bend it in the right place easily. And that should give the whole spine more strength too. So I welded that up, and this time I ground away the sides of the throat too to offer less of a place for things to get snagged on. And I smoothed out the worst bumps and joins, and I gave the backs of the wings more support too. And that, ladies and gentlemen, worked out quite well. I was chuffed. But one furrow won't do at all. No, no, bring on another. Those big T-pieces on the pipe are heavy, but they're excellent because they're wide enough to stop wobble and loose enough to act as hinges. And they're surprisingly cheap, €6.50 each. €6.50? How can they sell them for that? I made washers for the gap, the spacing gap. Ideally, as I say, I'm looking for 6 inches between the furrows, but you know, that's quite tight. The idea is that the plough heads will work independently of each other, so if one has to ride up over a stone, for instance, the other shouldn't be lifted at the same time. Promising again, but you can see the build-up between them. There just isn't enough space for the soil to go anywhere, so it's piling up. And the throats are still getting choked, and soon I'm just dragging soil and mulch along in a big heap. I was hoping it was just because the soil was so wet and sticky, and there was just too much mulch in it. So I tried again in a slightly drier patch. Now I don't know whether you can see that, but it's quite good. It's actually working quite well, and it's making little planting troughs or furrows, but still too much build up between the ploughs. Adding a lot of sand or charcoal into the soil would help, but that would take time and it would be expensive. Interestingly, there's not so much build-up in the throat this time, but despite the sticky conditions. And it's sticky because it keeps raining. Oh, man. Meanwhile, I made a third plough head, and eventually the rain let up, with time rapidly running out. The third plough is to help me see where the build-up is happening and why. Now, the main difference this time is that I brought each pair of wings closer together, just by a little bit, and it mostly works now. If the soil isn't too wet, and if the mulch is raked away, and if any build-up is cleared as you go. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. So let's go with one more plough. Now this might not look particularly impressive, but it really will transform the planting season here. It'll be just much quicker to put each clove into a nice bed of soft soil. They'll all need positioning and covering up by hand, so it's still labour intensive, but that's okay.
It's working fine, but it's not going quite deep enough where it's hard.
And in a way, the best thing is that I won't need to bother the horses or build a tractor or set up a winch or something. So next to no soil compaction. It is quite heavy to pull. Have a go if you like, but it's certainly doable. I can pull this up and down the beds, so that's what I'm going to do. One pass is okay, but two is better. Now I know, of course, lots of you will be saying I should just go and buy some sort of motorised tilling machine or rotavator with furrow attachments already installed, but those things chop everything into a pulp. The precious soil structure is wrecked. Worms are cut into pieces, mycelium webs are ripped apart. Those machines are not good for your soil. Well, sorry, yeah, no, those machines are not good for our soil. Our soil structure is just so incredibly fragile. We try our best to build soil here, add it more depth, but the rains just try endlessly to wash it away again. So minimum interference is essential. My priority now is to get the garlic in and then cover up the beds as quick as I can to protect it under a blanket of mulch. Anyway, there you go. I hope you found this a bit interesting. I know that a lot of you don't have the opportunity to dig and plant and grow and harvest, but surely it can't be very far back in your family history, because that's what everybody's been doing for the last few thousand years. And we're so lucky to be able to use this bit of land for a while and still have soil to work with. All around us there are examples of the damage that soil erosion has done. There are hundreds, thousands of acres where nothing can grow anymore because the soil has simply been washed away. And every year it gets wetter here. What interesting times we live in.